what can we do? How can we show up in a way that a smart device can't? We know how to prioritize. We're not looking at things as competitive, but rather collaborative, win-win rather than win-lose.
How do you think we can make space for kids who are not brilliant in data-friendly ways?
Competence without character, I feel, is dangerous. We need to build competence, but we also need to build moral ethics and character along with that.
How do you think AI can help students in pursuing their lifelong learning?
We can use AI in so many different ways, but I think we need to first become self-aware.
Now that we covered a lot about psychology, neuroscience, how the pedagogy is to be kind of aligned to that. For slightly kind of the next section of our question is kind of getting to more the technology aspect, right? From how how the education and technology are merging and how the new age technologies like AI are kind of incorporating into education. So, tying to your work with Advantage trained teachers, I think you would coach teachers about AI. How can they integrate AI into their teaching and process? And before that, first of all, they shouldn't feel threatened of their relevance because of their AI. So kind of how do you kind of group them in that direction?
I think it's two ways, actually. So, the first part, like the premise of my book on brain compatible learning, is that I ask teachers to remember one thing, and even parents, when I do parenting programs as well. Now, with technology being so alluring and so captivating for youngsters, I can't let go of their smart device, whether it's their phone or tablet. We as light breathing human beings in four walls seem quite boring, right, to a child. This digital native that has all these images and gamification and immediate feedback loops, all that happening. We're kind of boring and slow and uninteresting, less colorful, less dynamic. So what we need to concentrate on is this question. The first part: what can we do? How can we show up in a way that a smart device can't? Okay, so that's number one. So whether it's the social and emotional aspect, whether it's the experiential, the multisensorial, right? It's not just the sight and the hearing and the seeing, right? It's also the feeling and the experiencing and the tasting and the all those things, right? That multisensorial experience that gets fed into that episodic, memory, that's so rich and that's so long lasting. Um, so that's the first part. What can I do that a smart device can't do? The second part, your question about AI, um, is that it can be your assistant. You don't have to feel threatened by it at all. As long as you are very aware of what your human only qualities are, of how you can show up in the classroom or home or whatever as an educator parent, that's one aspect. But it can help you show up in very interesting and creative ways because it's going to prompt you and assist you to actually show up in more interesting ways. And AI can actually, I think before ChatGPT, you would have to do the research yourself. Yes, you had Google or you had reference books. I would bring a lot of material from the US back in the day. But now you can just put in, what is your pedagogy? What curriculum is it? Is it IB? Is it Cambridge? Is it CBSE? What's your pedagogy model? Is it UDL? Is it brain-based learning? Is it multiple intelligence? What do you want to integrate? You want to integrate UN SDGs? What else do you want to integrate, right? You put it in, it's just the way that you prompt it. And it's going to give you a whole list of activities on how you can actually, what you can share with the students. That's going to be very interesting. So I think it's a great assistant to have. In fact, just yesterday, one of my colleagues, she was showing me, I was trying to just look for something on the water cycle. And I prompted AI, and it gave me this cute little story about Wally the water drop. Just to explain the whole water cycle in a little story, just a couple of paragraphs. So maybe you may not have been able to humanly think of that story, or a few of us could have, but you put it in, and here you put a nice little story to share. So AI can be a great assistant in many, many ways.
That's a wonderful takeaway for all the teachers who are watching our episode today. Any other thoughts on how AI can be used in the future, and what are some of the things that AI can never replicate in a classroom? What do you think?
So I think the first part to that, Nishant, would be to say that I think AI is becoming more prevalent and available now. I have seen a little while back that in China, I think there's these cameras that are determining how kids are engaged, how many times they raise their hand or respond in a classroom, and they're tracking that. And student engagement is key, right? We want the experience, the teaching learning experience to be engaging, and we need to kind of monitor how engaged the students are. So AI can probably in the future, these type of sensors or monitors can probably track student engagement as well as student learning outcomes of how they're responding in more of a formative assessment rather than a summative. So it's going to give you a very efficient way of tracking progress, right? And then maybe going back and reinforcing what's not understood uh, completely. The second part of where it can't be replicated, I think we covered a little bit in the previous question. So, as far as what AI can't replicate in the classroom, I think we touched upon it a little bit in the previous question, but it's probably also going to be just that human only component, right? That social and emotional component. Um, every human being has an essential need to feel seen and heard. And I think only a teacher can actually do that in the classroom, where the child is at, what is their level of learning, what is their zone of proximal development, according to Vygotsky, right? So the teacher can understand, while she can still use AI for a lot of things, understand where the child is at and where the child can go to the next level, right? So how do we, optimize that zone of proximal development, as Vygotsky says, and scaffold, learning to the best level for that child.
Right.
And it might be different for his classmate, who is more at a genius level, or maybe another classmate who's struggling a little bit and has special needs. So I feel that the teacher can take whatever AI gets and then deliver, in the human only social and emotional capacity that a machine can never do.
Absolutely. That brings me to the question which most of the audiences would be interested to know. The teachers, the parents, and school leaders as well. How do you balance screen time with soul time in your school curriculum also, where there's a lot of digital tools, digital aids which are being used?
Yeah, so I think the digital tools that we have, they've just extended our toolbox of what we have, but that's not the only resource. As I mentioned before, I think why are schools even relevant today? Why are teachers relevant today? Students, parents are sending their children to schools for the experience. That digital device is also at home, so you can learn at school how we could optimize this digital device, but what else can we do with the rest of our time? So back, when I was at Glendale prior to 2023, for 20 years, I think we believed in just creating learning places that are nurturing spaces for all the multiple intelligences. So we had not just really lovely, classrooms with group style, sitting. We had learning studios. We had a music studio, a life skills studio, home studio, visual art studio, drama studio. I mean, we really emphasize just as much as the academic subjects, all the learning that the kids were to do in the visual and performing arts and physical education, as well as sports and all the other activities like value education and life skills curriculum. So it was a very, very balanced schedule. So for us, we never had that issue when I was there about digital dependency, because things were not always around that. Um, Really wanted them to have those full embodied experiences, multisensorial. In fact, over the years, I had actually taken a couple of semester sabbaticals. I went to the States and I had courses in methods of physical education and methods of arts instruction. And we came back and really uplifted the co-curriculum, the co-curricular curriculum, and we added a lot of beautiful aspects and assessment in those, like the 5 strands curriculum that we did, introducing studio habits, because um, that's really important of how it develops us as individuals. Our creativity, our critical thinking, our, all the various intelligences. So I think there was a lot of body, mind, heart, and soul time that we had. It wasn't just a digital dependency.
Good to hear that the balance of this digital dependency is being done in the schools here. Now, shifting the focus from east to west again, because I have to kind of reach the worlds every time I talk to you. So, inspired by your course at Stanford on design thinking and at Harvard on universal design for learning, how do you merge your human centered design for learning with a classroom where AI personalizes every lesson?
I think, Nishant, it's easier now more than ever. When I was there, ChatGPT was not introduced or launched yet, right? So, if we take a look at what universal design for learning is, it's basically how do we maximize learning by minimizing the barriers. And in UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, we learn that the barrier is never in the student. It's in the environment or the teacher. So we need to reduce those. And what UDL proposes is 3 parallels of how we can, uh, uh, do the learning, the teaching and learning. So we have to provide multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of opportunity for action and expression for the students. Now, what UDL is doing, it's actually addressing the concern that we have in classrooms nowadays where there's neurodiversity. Not all children are neurotypical, right? So, how do you accommodate for special needs or different learning styles? I feel before UDL was even introduced, I think we were doing this with RMI, multiple intelligence and brain based learning, because our tagline was the more ways you teach, the more children you reach. You were already creating multiple pathways to understanding a topic, right? And being more comprehensive. Now, UDL is just kind of uh, taken that and kind of given you the why of learning, the what of learning, and the how of learning through these 3 verticals. So now with AI as your kind of your co-creator and your assistant, you can actually put in the students' learning so far, their proficiencies, their learning styles, as many details about their prior learning and student preferences and traits, and ask AI to just create a UDL style lesson plan for you. And it's amazing, and it's going to give you those multiple means of how you can engage the kids, multiple means of how the teacher can show representation of the material that they're going to be learning about, and multiple means of how they can perform action and expression of their learning. So it's easier now more than ever.
That's a very interesting perspective. And I mean, also since we've mentioned touched upon Harvard, we've come across a recent study by Harvard which says that AI tutoring is 2 times more effective in increasing the child's understanding level when compared to an active lecture. Slightly shifting the topic to something on your personal front, you've been a very passionate person pursuing art and dance for a long period of time. uh, AI today kind of can create music, painting, choreography all by itself, right? But what do you think that is sacred from a human creativity point of view?
I think a lot. I mean, I think when we participate in anything that is visual or performing, it's a fully embodied experience, right? It's, you know, full of emotion and movement. I mean, we're kind of shaped by our history, our culture, and as human beings, we make meaning out of that experience. And how is that showing up, for us? Um, as you said, I really try to balance my yin energy, and I would, take a week long intensive at the Art Institute in Chicago with different courses: urban sketching, Islamic art, painting and drawing, exploratory acrylics, different things. And at Harvard, actually, there was a course in Project Zero called Studio Thinking. And in that, and I've taken this back to our schools, is that there's 8 habits of mind that can be developed through the visual arts that actually cannot be learned in academics alone. Things like, observing, very close, like when you're drawing something or painting something, your focus on that object is so intense. You're looking at all the texture, you're looking at how the light falls on it, where there's dark and shadow, where it would almost be kind of black in your painting or drawing, would almost be white where the sun or the light source is hitting it. And it helps you to observe more closely, uh, and clearly. It helps you to engage, persist, develop a craft. So there's 8 studio habits like that. uh, and I think they're great, because it teaches you to look slowly and carefully, and in this fast-paced world we're not doing that. And then same thing with performing arts, I mean, when we are on the stage, it's a different experience. You're nervous, you're have the emotion, how you articulate, how you can express yourself to an audience. I mean, AI can give you a lot of these, tools, but you have to live it, right? We're human beings that have to live it. My father-in-law always said, befriend the stage. The auditorium is named after him because he was in Hyderabad Dramatic Circle. He could recite Shakespeare at the drop of a hat. He was so articulate and well read. And he said, whether it's poetry, debate, theater performance, that type of confidence that you get on the stage, that's going to take you very far in life. It's going to help your confidence and your communication skills and how you show up. So anything that we learn through the co-curricular activities, through these multiple intelligence round, whatever it is, this multiple kind of sensorial exposure, this is what makes us who we are. This is how we show up in a relationship. This is what we bring to the table. This is what we bring as a unique human being, a multifaceted human being.
That's so inspirational. I think most of the kids who are watching this, most of the even the adults who are watching this would be so inspired by not just your professional part, but also the all the personal pursuits you've had over the years.
I think we all have to have hobbies.
Uh, Absolutely, I agree. A shifty topic from technology to whatever has been your philosophy for education. Glendale, your schools have promoted character education a lot. Do you think isn't just competence training enough to meet the metrics of what the jobs and schools emphasize right now for students?
Well, until I was there, our twin focus has always been both character and competence. And the competence aspect of through pedagogy was through our brain compatible learning and our multiple intelligence. So that built our multifaceted competence. Now, for character education, what we did is we adopted the, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, we were the first school in India to do so. I say that because I was at the think tank on global education at Harvard back when the UN SDGs were rolled out to schools. And upon my return, within a week, we mapped it to our vision, mission, and objectives, and it was so aligned. And we just integrated it right away. So I know that that's was really important, and it helped us to have the kids not only learn about the world around them, but also on how to make it a more sustainable, and humane place. Um, the other aspect of character education, I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I read it when I first got married in the mid 90s, and it's been transformative for me. In fact, first day, first orientation workshop for myself with my teachers has always been on the Seven Habits. And I felt that if they can feel empowered on how they can be proactive in their circle of influence and have that vision and set their priorities about what they want to do in their personal and professional life, that is more important than me teaching them pedagogy. So I start with themselves first. I want them to feel more empowered as individuals. So the same thing we actually shared with the students in what is the Seven Habits version for kids, which is the Leader in Me program. And again, the paradigms of leadership that this Cubby's curriculum has is very much in line. Develop the whole person. Everyone has genius. Everyone can be a leader. Focus on the whole person. And educators are supposed to empower learners to lead their own learning, right? So that was very much aligned. And I'm very proud to say that we adopted the Leader in Me program, and we are till now the first and only accredited lighthouse school by Franklin Covey. And that is actually teaching character. The Seven Habits is teaching character. It's teaching children to value what they value and how to implement what they value, in life. So it is a character education. It's about being effective with oneself. It's about being effective with other people, how you seek win-win and synergize, seek first to understand, then be understood. And then it tops it off in the seventh habit with sharpening the saw, which is all about the whole person approach. So I'm very much aligned to that. And then, of course, he had the eighth habit that he published later, and it's about finding your voice and helping others find theirs. So that's really important. I think it's a beautiful synergy between the intelligences and the habits and how it builds both character and competence. I think the character part, along with competence, is super important because when we take a look at the 21st century skills, the four C's of the 21st century, what are they? They're communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Now, let's say we have only that, but we don't have character. So I've actually added the fifth C, which is character. So I say there's five C's of the 21st century, not just four. It's very important. Why? Let's take a look at an example from history. Hitler, right? Negatively perceived, but he was actually quite intelligent, but he didn't have character or the ethics, right? So communication skills, excellent. How he kind of led the Nazi movement. Critical thinking skills. When he was in prison, he wrote Mein Kampf, which actually showed his logic of whatever he was doing. Not that it was right. Creativity. He came up with very creative ways to execute millions of people, right? Collaboration. How he, collaborated to do what he did until World War II ended. So he was intelligent, but he didn't have character. He didn't have ethics. He didn't have the moral ethics to do what he was doing. So that's why competence without character, I feel, is dangerous. We need to build competence, but we also need to build moral ethics and character along with that.
Like, you did mention about Leader in Me, which was followed at Glendale, and as you rightly said, Glendale still holds the accolade of being the only night of school in the country. And uh, what do you and you personally won multiple awards in leadership and academic excellence. What do you think is your leadership philosophy? If you can kind of throw some light on that, and also how do you think children, today's children, you know, traits can be cultivated in them so that they are nurtured into global leaders of tomorrow?
So I think Seven Habits is one of the leading leadership programs in the world. It's not the only one. It is what I was introduced to as a young adult. It really worked for me. I was very passionate about applying it. I think a lot of my success is owed to me putting the principles into practice of being proactive. In fact, my tagline and my email is, Mahatma Gandhi's quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. That's basically, in a sense, being proactive and focusing on your circle of influence. And over time, it becomes bigger and more effective. So, on and on, each habit, I can give multiple examples of how I've implemented in my life. And that's why I would thought it was very important to implement in teachers' lives and then the students' lives. Like I said, it's a model that worked for me. It's universal. Stephen Covey had studied leaders from different places of different times and basically distilled these seven habits from what was common among all the leaders. If you ask me what my personal leadership quality is, yes, I believe in leader in me, but also there's a collective leader in we. And with that, I think one concept that I had introduced in my schools is leadership density. So it's no longer this, uh, you know, authoritative figure at the top and everybody's just a mere follower, but it's a participatory kind of leadership that there's a goal or there's a direction and we all kind of move towards that. So in my schools I had a strategy and action team, and in the strategy and action team, I attended the course in like 2013. So 10 years we had this program, and all the heads of departments, all the in charges, all the coordinators, class-wise coordinators, and the leaders, the vice principals, heads were a part of it. So we had a very good, like I would say 30% of the teaching and learning faculty that was entrusted with this strategy and action to make sure that the vision, mission, and objectives is being taught, to make sure that the pedagogy is permeating throughout each and every classroom to each and every student. We had a Glen Care team. We had a follow up. We did a lot of work. I don't know if every management worked that hard to, make sure that that vision is actually translated fully into action. Um, but it can only be possible with leadership density. When you have such a grandiose vision and such a passionate mission, you need to build a huge team of leadership and make sure that everyone is working towards that same goal. So that's what I would say. Leadership density is very important.
I think that's a great takeaway. The leader you be, which you mentioned, and I think I did observe that when you were running it there, because many interactions I've had with HODs and coordinators of the school, it did feel that they had a lot of decision making uh, authority to kind of take their decisions on the go for the good of the students. I mean that's great. I mean I've seen the positive effects of leadership in STEAM your school whenever I've interacted with them when you ran the school. Uh, but how do you think habits are important for leadership? Why so much emphasis on habits?
So habits, once I heard that if you take away the H, a bit of it is still there. If you take away the A, bit is still there. You take away the B, it is still there. So habits actually make us who we are. And we are a creature of habits. So I think it's the way we also show up. It's our mindset. So whether we are proactive or reactive, whether we have the vision, right? We're visionary in our thinking. We're intentional in our actions. We know how to prioritize. We're not looking at things as competitive, but rather collaborative, a win-win rather than win-lose. It's just the way that we work, the way that we synergize, the way that we lead our life essentially. And when we, it's like an operating system. So if we can operate with very good habits on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly, you see our trajectory of where we're going, be very effective, be very successful, I think, in the long term. Um, I think a newer book is Atomic Habits. That's really popular these days, right? You remove the friction, make it easy to do it, or piggyback on something that you already are doing. That's a way to like stack, a new habit on an old habit, things like that. So, uh, habits is essentially the baby steps and the building blocks of how we can be a leader.
You did emphasize a lot on leadership habits. I would want to draw your attention to the students right now. How do you think we can make space for kids who are not brilliant in data friendly ways?
Yeah, I think that's just such a small aspect. I mean, I myself and my siblings were successful careers and in life, but I mean, we weren't the best test takers for standardized tests and these, but we were great students. I mean, we were like, almost straight A students. So I feel that the blueprint for brilliance goes back to, I think, what I hold dear as my pedagogy. There's multiple ways to, reach those that level of brilliance, and standardized tests or is not the only way. And I feel we need to shift away from looking at intelligence as something that is fixed or determined by that score that somebody got at that one point in time. Rather, intelligence is something that is so dynamic. It grows with time, with through every experience, every interaction, every engagement, every empowering experience. It grows, it continues to flourish and bloom throughout our life. Uh, so I think we need to look at intelligence completely in a different way. I think we need to look at it in more of a lifelong format.
Right. And how do you think AI can help students in pursuing their lifelong learning?
Well, I think you have access to anything and everything at your fingertips now. Um, I feel when you look at AI and MI, there's kind of a parallel. They're both ecosystems. One is artificial and one is, you know, the whole world in which we live in. Both get better with diverse and varied inputs. So the broader the experience and the more the input in, the more intelligent generative AI becomes and your multiple intelligences become. So, right? So they grow and they get better with more experience, more exposure, and more enrichment, right? More varied enrichment, in fact. They're both non-linear, right? They don't grow in like one kind of spectrum. It's a lot of different connections and permutations and combinations, and it grows kind of stronger. And I think that's how we have to look at our intelligence of how we might have some setbacks and challenges, but we might come back stronger, from that. Um, I feel that AI is a tool that can keep helping us. Some people I heard that they use it to for advice, whether they're trying to get in shape, and take pictures of their food and keep track of their healthy habits and their nutrition. Some people use it as a diary, the thoughts, and some people are confused. They put in list A, list B, and ask ChatGPT to say, like, what should I do? You know? So we can use AI in so many different ways, but I think we need to first become self-aware of what our multiple potentialities are. And for me, I just use multiple intelligences for that. But you can shorten it in the form of like just your different aspects of yourself, your body and your mind and your heart or soul or whatever it is. And we keep making sure that we have time to nurture those things, like Cubby says, just shot in the sock. It's a balanced self renewal and it's lifelong. And in this fast paced world where AI can out write us, out calculate us, out organize us, it's growing at lightning speed. And if we're going to be stuck to how we performed in high school, uh, or our education, that's so incorrect. You have to keep learning and unlearning, as Toppler said, right? Learning, unlearning, relearning throughout our lifetime if we want to be relevant and want to keep up with things and also focus on our human only aspects.
That's amazing. You've covered the multiple spectrums of topics over the course of the entire and pedagogy. Any advice to the aspiring school leaders for the future?
I think what any good school has to remember is to keep the child as a priority. Child first. Everything and anything is catered to how it's going to benefit the child's learning and enrichment and empowerment. And that is what we are in schools, is that we're in the business of learning. So if learning is not happening, we're responsible. And that's why my whole research backed kind of way of implementing things and making sure that we were doing research or implementing research based practices, psychology backed practices for the well being of the whole child, not just cognitively, academically, but holistically. I think that's something that every school needs to pay attention to. I think I knew that I would not be able to succeed in anything that I do. So I knew that I would not be able to succeed in accomplishing what I wanted to do for the children in my schools unless I work with the teacher. So any school is no better than its teachers. And for that, we have to invest in the teachers. If we want to make an impact with the students, we are not going to be there in the classroom. The teacher is. So any school has to invest in teacher training. And what I found is that nobody wants to invest in teacher training unless it's for a Cambridge requirement, an IB requirement, and they have to because of certification. Nobody wants to invest in it. But for me, that was my main focus. My main focus is continue to train and retrain the teachers. My teachers used to get poached left and right. I mean, they knew that I was bringing the world's best practices and learning from Stanford or Harvard or Cambridge, and I was, teaching the teachers. That felt a little sad when my teachers were poached, but I also know that we've got a lot of great principals and vice principals out there that have benefited from that training, and those children are benefiting, hopefully, from that. So teacher training, child is a priority, teacher training is a must. And I think the way we build up the culture of our school, what we value, it has to be seen and heard and felt everywhere. The moment a parent walks into the school, if you believe in cherishing the experience called childhood, how do you feel it? How does it show up? If you believe your, parent is your partner in education, how do you treat them? Schools that are looking at it as a business, and I never did. I wanted to just create value and create impact. You can't, look at a balance sheet and say, what do we take out? What expenses do we take out? And how do we? It doesn't work that way. It's a breathing, living system. It's how you know, nurture that goose that's going to lay the golden egg. If you starve her, you don't take care of her, you don't support her and nurture her, how are the results going to happen? So we took very, very good care of what it is that we were doing. And I hope that all schools have that passion and that purpose and that intent in doing what they're doing. Because this is affecting the lives of children. We have been entrusted with an immense, immense responsibility, and we can't take it lightly.
That's a very strong note to end our conversation today. Thank you so much for giving us your valuable time, and thank you so much for inviting us to your beautiful home.